This is Jets FM on AOFN. It's 2021, and it couldn't happen at a better time for Jet fans. That's right. The future is here. The head coach that the media, the fans, just anybody associated with the New York Jets can get behind, Robert Saleh. He will be leading this team when the 2021 season begins, and we can't wait. Jan Levine joining me as always to talk Jets football as the 2021 offseason for the New York Jets begins in style. How's it going, Jan?
I'm good and I'm happy. I mean, you know that obviously I watch the Niners a lot and big fan of Robert Saleh, and we talked a bunch about who some of our top choices were. And for me, I mean, getting him, and surprisingly, in my opinion, getting him, given kind of some of the rumors that were out there, especially from Detroit, that he looked to be kind of locked and loaded to go there, was a very pleasant surprise, especially, last week when he left there after having his second meeting and was heading down the New Jersey Turnpike to Philly. You got a little nervous. But
I got a little bit nervous when they brought Arthur Smith in for the second interview, because at that point, now, at any moment, you could hear, well, the Jets have named Arthur Smith head coach. And it was like, I do not want Arthur Smith as head coach. This is a typical, assistant coach that has had a good couple of years, and that's it. I mean, he's popped out of nowhere, and he might turn out to be a good coach. But Saleh is the proven commodity. He's got that kind of Rex Ryan appeal, and I think he's going to be even better than Rex in the long run. Rex, that kind of blowhardiness that can only last so long. But Robert Saleh, yeah, he's an excitable guy on the sidelines, but he's not all that excitable when you get off the sidelines. He's a very even-tempered guy. He's not like Rex Ryan, so I think fans need to know that. But yeah, absolutely. I thought in the beginning he was going to go to Detroit because he's got the ties. That's where he's from. But hey, Detroit doesn't want him. They'd rather go the Dan Campbell way. Go ahead. Good luck. Hopefully Dan Campbell's your guy. But the Jets clearly got the number one assistant on defense. The enemy was supposed to be the hot guy on offense, but the Jets got the number one assistant on defense in the market, proving what we've said all along, that this job is a good job, especially with Joe Douglas in charge.
Well, I mean, look, from all you hear from his former players, right, and the thing we talked about is you need a guy who's the head of the organization, right? I didn't care which side of the ball he came from, offense or defense. I needed a guy who could be a leader, right? And you watch Saleh interact with his players, and then if you've watched some of the conferences he's done, talks about coaches, that he talks about the necessity of having guys who complement each other. He can't do everything. He doesn't know everything. He needs to have guys who work with him, who complement him, who make him better, who basically make up for whatever weaknesses that he has and collectively make a better whole. And you hear the stuff that Richard Sherman has said about him. You hear the stuff that other players who have played for him. He is a leader of men. He doesn't belittle his players. He doesn't criticize them to the point where he loses them, but he gets his messages across whereby he's the kind of guy that's going to take your strengths and maximize them. He's a guy who's going to take your weaknesses and hopefully make them remediate them, or at worst, kind of mask them a little bit so they don't show up. And he's the kind of guy that looks like he was going to lead the organization as a whole, which is something we've been lacking. Even with Rex Ryan, right? He deferred on offense a lot just because that's his personality, which is fine. But as you mentioned, the blowhardiness got a little tiresome, unfortunately. He kind of was writing checks that he couldn't cash. And now you have a guy who, hopefully, along with Joe Douglas, seem to be in concert with one another, and a guy who's going to lead the organization, hopefully taking a major step forward next year, but then hopefully taking further steps forward in years to come.
I love the fact that he doesn't know him, Joe Douglas. Love it. Because, we wouldn't have been shocked at all had Wink Martindale or Doug Peterson been the head coach of the New York Jets. And if that were to happen, even though I would have accepted it, the fact is, deep down, I would have been very disappointed that, oh, here we go again. You got to stick to the people you know. It's the old boys club. Joe Douglas knows these guys. He doesn't feel confident enough to go out and try to find somebody on his own. I love the fact that he hired Saleh with absolutely no ties whatsoever. I think it's great. And this is why I've said for months and really for over a year now, it's about Joe Douglas. And Joe Douglas, I've trusted all along. He hasn't done anything major to disappoint me. This was the big test, and he passed it with flying colors. And again, Saleh wanted to be here. Why? This is New York. It's a New York market. It's a great franchise. The owners, I don't care. I said this last week. I don't care what the media thinks with this concoction about ownership being cheap. The ownership has never been cheap. This ownership will spend what it takes in order for this franchise to win. And what's great now is, look, Adam Gase never had a shot. Rex Ryan really never had a shot because the GM, the offensive coordinator situation, nobody was in sync for the first time that I could recall. I don't even know how long. You have to go back so long that I probably don't even remember. The Jets organization looks like they're in sync, where ownership is stepping back, allowing the GM to run the football team for the first time in eons. The general manager has a great eye for talent. He has stockpiled draft picks. We've got incredible cap space. We have a young, up-and-coming head coach, somebody that is looked at in the NFL as a rising star. Douglas has a great reputation. This is the beginning, hopefully, of a beautiful time in Jet history, and we just got to keep our fingers crossed that this is it, because I don't think the setup is something that can happen very often. I mean, it's set up so perfectly. This has to be our time.
You would hope so. I mean, look, they got a guy who clearly was, in my opinion, the number one coach on the market, the guy who I wanted. I mean, I thought Brian Dybul might be in the mix. You mentioned Martindale was going to be in the mix. I had no interest in Doug Peterson. I had friends of mine who were Eagle fans who were going, see, he's going to go to Jersey. He's going to go to their Jets. And I'm like, yeah, no, I sure as heck hope not. But now they have a guy who clearly is set to be the leader of the organization.
And we want our own guy.
Hopefully.
That's the other thing. And I think that's what I don't think other people understood. We want our guy. You know, we don't want Doug Peterson or retread. Yeah, it's nice he's won a Super Bowl. He's probably got better resume than a lot of other guys out there. But we want our guy. We want our gem. We want a guy that we could look back and say, that was our Bill Parcells. You know, that was our Bill Belichick. That was our legendary head coach that's going to be here for 10 or 15 years. That's going to lead us to the best, foundation that we've ever had. That's what we want. And I think the fans are excited about the possibility that the combination of Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh could very well be exactly what we've been waiting for.
And the rumor of who he's going to bring in as an offensive coordinator with Mike LaFleur is also a guy who you would expect to hopefully grow and work with whoever's going to be their quarterback, right? And that's going to be the next key decision. Not necessarily Saleh's alone, but clearly there must have been chatter associated with that in terms of when the interviews took place as to, is Sam Darnold going to be the guy, or are you taking maybe Zach Wilson or somebody else?
I think it's going to be Darnold
to be your quarterback of the future.
I think Darnold. I think they're going to give him another year. We talked about that a little bit.
I have a feeling also. I do. The question is, though, is now do you take the kid Smith at number 2 to be a wide receiver, or do you take the bookend tackle, who there is some questions as to whether or not he is the guy that people should take at number 2 and whether or not he's deserving of being the number 2 pick overall?
My guess is that Joe Douglas is going to do everything in his power to trade down. Everything in his power. Now, I'm not talking about 5 or 6 spots. I'm talking about 3 or 4 spots. And that includes, doesn't have to be the quarterback. The Cincinnati Bengals are sitting there in dire need of an offensive line. Hey, you know what? If you're desperate enough, you want to move up to 2 and get him, let's talk about a deal. We all know Lawrence is going to Jacksonville. The Miami Dolphins are another team, just like the Jets, that would probably love to get Devonta Smith. But the problem is wide receivers just aren't taken at 2 and 3. It just doesn't happen. It's usually the offensive lineman, the edge rusher, the quarterback. So that doesn't mean it can't happen. It just all depends. Hey, if you can't trade down and he's the best guy on your board, you take the guy that's best on your board. But I think that Joe Douglas is going to try to trade down. He's not taking a quarterback. Sam Darnold, I believe, will be his guy for this year. They're going to try to build around him one more year, and will give this new offense a different scheme. We'll give Sam Darnold one more different opportunity with a different coaching staff and a different style to see if maybe this will click. And it makes sense. You give him a year, and it doesn't mean that we have to see miracles, but we have to see the type of progress that after this year, hey, you know what? Sam's our guy. Now we're going to resign him to a nice long-term deal.
So it's interesting. I don't know if you read. So Josh McCown discussed a little bit today. He was in the paper. And he talked about how the system that they're going to use, which is similar to Kyle Shanahan's, is more of a play-action, run-based system where it reduces the amount of reads that the quarterback has to make and hopefully sets him up for success, which then means that you definitely need to improve your offensive line, which is something we've talked about, and we're going to need the bell cow back, right? And that's kind of the key that we're going to need, which we don't have right now. Now, my only question with Smith is, look, first of all, you got to make sure the hand injury he suffered in the championship game is fine. He doesn't have any lingering effects. Secondly, look, I was a big Jerry Jeudy fan. Jerry Jeudy put up monster numbers at Alabama, just like Smith did. Jerry Jeudy did not have a particularly good year this year, partly impacted by his
That's why receivers don't normally go 2 and 3.
Right. I'm a little reluctant sometimes based upon the history I've seen sometimes with Alabama wide receivers, especially lately, other than Julio. There are guys that I'm a bit of questioning as to whether or not you want to take him that high. And granted, we obviously have a couple of months before the draft, and we saw what Douglas can do, and I think they'll make the right calls. But bringing in an offensive coordinator who can maximize, hopefully, the talents of your guy, spending your money wisely in free agency, and there's a lot of wide receivers in free agency this year. One of them who's playing tomorrow for Tampa Bay by the name of Chris Godwin, who would look awfully nice in jet green and white right now. That's the kind of wide receiver I'd love to see them get. Build around him, and the guy who I think is going to have hopefully a rebound season, and it's a guy you and I were expecting coming into this year was going to take that step forward. But the system, in my opinion, under LaFleur, Chris Herndon should be targeted substantially in that system.
And if tight end, which probably will be a big part of the system, even though we have high hopes for Herndon, it does mean that you should, in a deep tight end class, think about using a tight end again, either in free agency or the draft. And by the way, I think the running back that would fit really good with the Jets. And another reason why, if you can trade down and you can accumulate another pick or two, and you already have that first round pick from Seattle, which by the way works out perfectly with Seattle getting eliminated early, so we get a little bit of an earlier choice, and that is Najee Harris. I mean, Najee Harris is Derrick Henry basically. You know, same program, same style, and I think a better version because Harris is a good receiver. So I think Harris, I mean, look, you have the other kid from Clemson who's also a fantastic prospect, Etienne. So when the Jets start thinking about where are we going to go running back, and they have one of those picks in the middle of the first round, that's where those guys are going to go. So I think that's probably what the Jets will target. The big question is, like you said, with free agency at wide receiver, do they go out and spend on a Godwin, on an Allen Robinson? If they do, then we know they're not even going to think about an early wide receiver in the draft because we already have Denzel Mims. And if you bring in another wideout, that's just not going to be the style of the New York Jets. They're not going to go out there with this particular team and look for 3 or 4 or 5 different types of wide receivers as tight ends. It's going to be about building the offensive line, building the defense, and being a physical smash mouth type of football team, which is the reason why you have Robert Saleh. And of course, we all know the way Joe Douglas likes to run and scout his football team. And it's the same reason why he brought in Arthur Smith, because that's what Arthur Smith likes to do. So you knew Joe Douglas had a really good idea of the type of head coach he wanted.
Absolutely. And he got the guy who we wanted. There's a guy. Look, I think the hiring of Saleh, first of all, changes the mindset associated with the organization. Clearly, as you've seen, it's changed the perception of the organization with the team's ability to go out and get the guy who they wanted and may have targeted as their number one guy. In addition, you have a guy who's viewed as a leader, a guy who's got a pristine reputation around the league, which hopefully can be something that's attractive, especially if he puts together the staff around him that he wants to put together.
And when we're looking at free agency, here's the key. Of course, we have to look at San Francisco. San Francisco has got about number 10, number 12 cap space. So they're okay, nowhere near as good as the Jets. But there are a number of free agents coming out of San Francisco this year. A big number. Matter of fact, they have 4.
I think it's 12 or 13 at least, if I remember correctly, maybe more.
Yeah, and they have like 7 or 8 defensive backs who are free agents. And we know how important it's going to be for the Jets and this new defense. So definitely expect one of those corners are going to come over from San Francisco. I have no doubt. At least one of those corners. You have to re-sign Marcus May. We've talked about that all offseason. You can bring back Brian Poole if for whatever reason, as long as Saleh believes that Poole fits his defense. I can't imagine that he won't believe that that's the case. But other than that, you have, do you want to bring Perryman back? Do you want to bring Jenkins back? And by the way, bringing Jenkins back makes a little bit more sense now because Saleh is a 4-3 guy. So we know our defense, we've said it all along, is more talent-wise. It's about a 4-3 look. So Jenkins makes more sense. They don't have to pay him a lot. We'll see about that. And Basham. That's it. The Jets don't have a lot of free agents that they have to bring back. And, of course, the big one's Marcus May. Keep in mind, there's only one player that the Jets can actually cut and make a little headway on. And that is Fant. Because you can.
Yeah, we still got 71 million of cap room. So
we have a lot of cap room. I'm just talking about guys that still have 2 years left in their contracts, though.
Yeah.
So, Fant's got 2 years. Van Routen's got 2 years. So if you want to let those guys go, you can do that. You don't have to worry about much dead cap space. But you have to keep this in mind. McGovern, who didn't exactly have a great year, they might just bring him back for another season because they have to. I mean, they got $10 million in dead cap space. They're not going to cut him and lose $10 million. That doesn't mean that they won't go out and pick up some insurance. I mean, Ben Garland's 33 years old, played for the Niners last year, and is a pretty decent, veteran. So those are the things that we're going to talk a lot about between obviously now and once the free agent period begins. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, this is going to be great. We've been waiting for an offseason like this forever.
Yep. So the best comment I heard, though, is because of everything with COVID, this is the detriment, unfortunately, of having a Zoom conference call, because you'd love to be at the press conference where Saleh is introduced.
When is he going to be? He hasn't been. He hasn't had the interview, has he?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that they haven't announced it yet, but I don't recall seeing anything in terms of when he's going to be introduced.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk more about that. But yeah, basically, it's going to be an interview. He's going to sit in a room like Urban Meyer did, and he's going to get on a Zoom, and that's it. So it is what it is, but still. The fact that he'll sit there for
we have our coach.
Yes, that's all we care about. He's going to sit there for a half hour. He's going to take questions for the New York media, and we're going to love every second.
And by the way, he has a little bit of a connection to New York. His brother-in-law it was in the paper today as to why Saleh became a coach, and his brother was actually working in the Trade Center on 9/11 as a financial analyst trainee. So he's got a little bit of a connection to New York already.
Mm-hmm. Also, by the way, just letting you know the other key free agents, and forget about Jimmy Garoppolo, okay? I don't want to hear any, because you know what's going to happen. There's no way the Jets. Now, look, San Francisco, I don't even think they're going to get rid of Garoppolo anyway. They had an opportunity to save money to restructure his contract last year. They didn't do it. I think they're going with Garoppolo, but as bad as Sam Darnold has been, I'd rather give Sam Darnold another year than waste my time with Jimmy Garoppolo.
I'm a guy who is a Niner fan also. So, but I will admit to you that the moving to go from Darnold to Garoppolo makes absolutely no sense, given where they are in terms of contracts and structure of the contracts and money that's going to cost them, and given the struggles that Garoppolo had. You'd rather see if Darnold could maybe take a step forward underneath a new organization and a new regime, as opposed to bringing in somebody who there's substantive question marks already in that framework and structure.
And by the way, Beathard and Mullins are free agents, so it wouldn't be a surprise if they went out there, they signed one of those two quarterbacks.
I could see Mullins maybe, because Mullins actually didn't look too bad this year before he got hurt. As a backup, because Lord knows our backup this year didn't do particularly well.
Well, again, that's going to be whether or not San Francisco wants to re-sign one of those guys as well. But
I'd much rather focus on the corners and the defensive
I'm
side
just saying. I'm just going over the other players.
No, I get it.
Trent Williams, by the way, is also a free agent. Now, if you bring in, by the way, this is the other thing about thinking about going after the Oregon kid at tackle. Do you really want to draft a tackle at number 2? Who's going to be your right tackle? I mean, right tackles don't get drafted at number 2. So that's why it makes.
And there's questions as to whether or not he is the second best player in the draft overall. Also, look, I think he's going to be a fine bookend. I just don't know whether he. Put it this way, I don't think at this point in time you view him as the same ilk of Becton as to what we think Becton can be, based upon what we saw this year.
And again, Trent Williams is 33, coming off a fine season. He's a free agent. That's the type of guy you go after. Hey, we'll give him a 1 or 2 year deal. You play right tackle for us. You also
that's the guy you and I wanted a couple of years ago, and he was available.
You also offensively, you have Kendrick Bourne, a pretty good young wide receiver, which would be a nice pickup for the Jets if they didn't want to go after, and spend big money on some of the other veterans. You've got Tevin Coleman. You have Jeff Wilson at running back. We could see those guys. Kyle Juszczyk, if they want to run the same type of fullback offense, then they're going to need a fullback. Defensively, besides the DBs, and of course Richard Sherman's a big name that I tell you the truth, I want nothing to do with at his age. Just stay in San Francisco. But Solomon Thomas, you have Ronald Blair. And everybody else, you're talking about corners and safeties like Kawan Williams, Dante Johnson, Ken Webster, Emmanuel Mosley. So there's a lot of corners, and Jaquiski Tart, the free safety, is also a free agent for San Francisco. And I also forgot to mention Jerick McKinnon. It will be a free agent at running back for San Francisco too. So we'll have some ex-49ers here for sure. I just can't wait once the NFL season ends. That's when it's going to be. I mean, we're going to be we're going to be at the top of the list with Jacksonville. Maybe another team or two that everybody will be paying attention to when the offseason begins, because that's when the New York Jets take over, baby, and hopefully for the last time. Hopefully, this is the last offseason that we're excited about the offseason, and we can move on to playoffs and better seasons where the draft is just an afterthought.
Sounds good to me. I'm looking forward to it. Look, I have no problem looking forward to the offseason if it's this offseason where you're looking to supplement what you've already done, as opposed to wholesale restructuring and changes to try to start getting to another level. That's where I hope we're at next year, where we've taken steps forward and we're looking to build around the edges to take that next step.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. We will talk again real soon, next few weeks. Again, depending on when there's another big story. I can't imagine there's going to be a story any bigger than this, though, until the free agency period begins. But we will definitely preview free agency sometime, late February, early March. But we'll be back before that. Jan, looking forward to an offseason, which should be a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of conversations and a lot of opportunity to talk about the continued rebuild of this roster.
Looking forward to it. It's nice to go into the offseason with raised expectations. Let's put it that way.
And please subscribe to this channel, or click the like button if you enjoy the video program here or any of our programs on the Our Lads Football Network or here on our channel under Prime Sports Network. For Jan Levine, I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to Jets FM on EOFN.